All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Ward Radio live stream. I'm joined in the studio by a super killer cast today. We have Brittany the Shadow present and ready, as well as none other than the Ward Librarian. The media. No, it's not the library anymore. What do they call it? The Media Center? Jonah, is that
it's Ward Library or the Media Center? No.
Okay.
Or the Ward Library.
Okay, awesome.
Oh my gosh, those eyebrows.
Yeah, I don't know if those eyebrows are really funny or really creepy.
Ready to rock.
I'm not sure which one that is.
The Ward Library getting crazy.
Anyway, thanks for everybody that's joining us in the chat. As always, remember, if you guys want us to read one of your super chats, we're going to try. If you got any burning questions, please make sure that you send us a super chat. And also, if you guys can, please let this be the day that we earn your subscription. Also, make sure that you like this stream because a lot has been going on over the past 2 or 3 days. Some would say the silence is deafening. Some would say interesting new details are dripping in. I have been called by every Tom, Dick, and Harry on the West Coast that ever had anything to do with fellow child of God, Tim Ballard, who is really just the center of the court of what's called the court of public opinion. Jonah so he's fighting for his life in the court of public opinion. And I've heard people that I trust saying things that go both for and against him. So we're actually going to go through literally all of my notes that I have gleaned from talking with all of these people. There's some contradictory information. There's some that speaks very much for Tim. There's some that speaks very much against him. But I would like to remind everybody that's watching this channel, from day one, we have specified that this is actually less about Tim Ballard than it is about how the church handles basically a public announcement of the same level and gravity that were given Tim Ballard. What some would call a public excommunication via tabloid. All right. So it's actually less about Tim and more about the protocols and the church's handling of the situation that we're calling into question, because whatever happens to Tim, gosh, could happen to any of us. Okay. So
and Brad Whitbeck. Oh
Let
me
double check. I do believe
You're muted, Brad.
I do believe that will have solved the problem. Okay, everybody in the chat, sorry, we had a little bit of technical difficulty right there. There was a crash, unfortunately, with OBS, which is our live streaming software. Anyway, please let me know in the chat if we are still cruising again. And we just want to remind the audience to tell them what this is and what this isn't. This is a live stream by what I would consider the best pro LDS live stream in the world, if not on YouTube, run by some of the handsomest individuals on the planet, namely, and specifically in this case, Brad Whitbeck, Jacob Hansen, Jonah Barnes, and myself. Okay. However, it is not a Tim Ballard Stan show. Yes. Sorry, babe.
You left me out.
This goes without saying. It goes without saying that Brittany the Shadow is stunning and brave.
Thank you.
So, anyway, this is not a Tim Ballard Stan show. As I repeated before, OBS crashed. We care actually far less about Tim Ballard and whether or not some celebrity was inappropriate in his speech or his action as much as how the church handled it, because that is germane to all of us as members of this church. How these kind of things are handled. So anyway, we're actually just going to go over all of the evidence and all of the questions that anybody has and just tell you what is fact, what is fiction based off of the mountain of evidence that I have gleaned talking with myriad figures from all walks of life and all of them with direct and immediate knowledge of what's going on. So before we go anywhere, anybody have anything that they want to say that I might have missed before we get started? Brad, Jacob, Jonah, anything you want to throw in here before I read some super chats and then get started?
What's going on, Jacob? Are you in a hip hop music video right now? Are you shooting a hip hop video right now? What's going on?
No,
with the hat?
we just finished football practice. I coached my son's Pop Warner football team. Go Miners!
Of course, he coaches his son's football team.
Okay.
Jacob, you know,
Nice.
Now that you're done flexing, you know,
We're pretty
of course,
good this year. We're 3-1 right now.
okay,
So,
and you're probably
doing all right.
standing on a bleacher. Just so that the camera doesn't show everybody how short you are. So anyway, no, I'm just kidding. So,
Do we want to do a quick response to John DeLynn calling us out and playing a clip from our first live stream instead of
Or
the live
should
stream
we
the night
just
before?
should we just make all of yes, we will address John DeLynn and his claims against us, or should we make all of the anti-Mormon hate watchers, just watch more ads and make us more money, because that's really all John DeLynn's lies and straw men are for. You know what I'm saying, is increasing our profile. But you know what, now that you brought it up, we might as well, because he did call you one of the top apologists of the LDS Church.
That's true.
He called who,
Well,
Brad?
I think he was calling us in general.
Was he really?
Some of the top apologists, which is crazy because we're literally random comedians who decided to start doing this and just say what we think.
I think he was actually referring to Will the Thrill, guys. I think that was actually
that's true.
That would make the most sense.
Yeah.
Well,
that would make the most sense.
Well, you've brought it up, and then I'm going to go over my long list of things that I've been able to confirm and deny. I've been able to debunk some claims by everybody in this. So, let's go to town. You know what, Brad? I could tell it's on the top of your mind. Tell us what your thoughts are, my friend.
Okay, so for starters, I was actually really pleasantly surprised by how down to earth the Vice reporters seemed. I was really appreciative of Anna Merlin's response, saying like, "Yeah, no, this actually was surprising." Right?
And you're referencing a live stream that John DeLynn did with the two authors of many of these Vice News articles that have come out, the premier investigative reporters that broke the original article, okay? And they were responding to a lot of the confusion questions and some might say accusations against them on the Mormon Stories podcast. And John DeLynn used, even though we'd already done by that time 3 live streams on the issue, I noticed he clipped you on the oldest one before any of the new information had come out.
He had to go back.
He had to go back before we even knew the name of who had given the statement, just to clip you saying, "We don't know the name of who gave the statement. They're liars," or something like that. Tell us what happened.
It was really funny because like they're watching and they're like, "Yeah, no, this is misinformation." And I'm like, I mean, it is now. But John DeLynn clearly saw our other video. He posted it on Ex-Mormon subreddit, so he had seen the video where we were like, "Hey, everyone who thinks it's an official statement, raise your hand." And we all raised our hands, right? Like, we had followed the story. We were just giving our initial reaction. And I think he also played a clip that sort of misrepresented my argument to make it seem like I was saying Vice completely made things up. And I probably didn't speak as clearly as I would have liked to. And so later in that same stream, I kind of corrected myself to say, "Hey, my theory is not that Vice made this up out of whole cloth. It's that they're responding back and forth with someone who does work at the church. They're just representing this as a official statement when it's maybe just this dude's opinion," right?
Well, actually, you know what? Let's see what you said here. I'm going to put up on the screen and see if our audience can watch it. Let's pull up a couple of clips.
I didn't articulate that well.
Well,
right?
hold on. Let's see if you're a fool or not.
But there's also
let's finish the Tim Ballard clip.
There's also the possibility that Tim Ballard has done something that we don't know about.
There's also the possibility that the church done effed up.
Okay, so obviously here, as the audience could see, we'd already engaged in the thought experiment. I think I remembered saying there was 5 different versions of what could have happened at the point. And one of them is that, everything went above book. The church knows something that we don't, and we're all a bunch of silly people for questioning them. And then there was another one like, "Oh, is it a rogue actor? Oh, is Vice lying? Oh, is it a mixture of both?" We explored all 5 possibilities. And yes, he only represented one of them to the news organization, which I think is actually demonstrative of how he runs his channel in the first place. Instead of showing people the reality of the situation, where you have the only pro LDS live stream on now their 4th live stream on this issue, gleaning all of the information that they can, he tries to show the oldest, most outdated one that gets him what he wants out of it. And what he wants is obviously to make the church look poor. So anyway, this isn't about him. He's amazing.
But really quickly, I thought Tim Marchman's comment was actually really funny when he said he lost 40 IQ points just watching.
Oh, I laughed out loud. And you know what,
really
Tim
funny.
Marchman, like, actually, I too was actually pleasantly surprised with the Vice News reporters. They seemed better than other Vice News reporters that I've dealt with in the past. I actually lived in New York City. Okay. And I have to tell you that they actually seemed pretty articulate, pretty ethical, and somebody that I would enjoy talking about this issue on our stream. So we reach out to you, just so you know. If you want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us on Twitter. You can reach out to us on Facebook. You can reach out to us on Instagram. You can reach out to us on Twitter. You can reach out to us on Twitter. You can reach out to us on Facebook. You can reach out to us on Twitter. 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 You can reach out to us on Twitter guilty as charged. You might lose 40 IQ points, joking around with this bro show. All
we
right,
can get it higher, guys. Come on. We can get more IQ points off that way.
Don't tempt me with a good time, right?
Rookie numbers.
But at the same time, you'd be surprised how many you get back just by watching us. So,
because they seem interested in reaching out to people who don't necessarily agree with them all the time. So this would be a great opportunity in our audience specifically to get more of that.
Okay.
One thing I noticed from the Vice interview is that they spent, and you can see it in the first few minutes in one breath. She says, "These guys act like this is strange. They act surprised by this. I mean, come on, they're so ridiculous." And then in the next breath, she says, "We were shocked the church sent this to us. We couldn't believe that they sent it to us." And you're like, okay, well, so which is it?
Well, I think
I can understand where she's coming from. I think I can understand where she's coming from. Like, initially, because I think my language was harsh enough in what I was saying, and then probably because I was letting some of my past experience with like the Salt Lake Tribune color things a little bit. So I think I ended up
Brad, on your worst day, you're more well measured than all of us. You didn't do anything wrong. You just got clipped. You got clipped.
But I did speak in a way that let them clip me, right? And so I think she was more responding to that particular clip and the way that it was coming across, which I didn't feel like represented my argument well enough anyway, that I kind of corrected it later. So I think she was fine, but
chat, everybody in the chat, can we all agree that Brad Whitbeck is the most unhinged, raging, clumsy, loose cannon on the show? Can we all agree in the chat, please? Can we all just put it down there?
Well,
that would make sense.
Either way, at the end of the day, the other thing I would like to remind the audience is that this is really only news for the LDS community. Outside, nobody cares. We are still irrelevant. We are still less than 1% of the population in most places. And my favorite comment that she made all day was like, I know you guys think this is a big deal within your community, but this was actually a small news article for us. And that's where my New York motion media environment producer came out. And I was like, oh man, these people have no idea how this is really not on the top of their priority list. Trust me, there's much bigger fish to fry. Like Russell Brand. You know what I'm saying? They are actually ironically going after Russell Brand that exact same week, which is why I say a lot of people that were confused in the very beginning. I'm going to show a couple of things on the screen to catch up anybody else who's just tuning in. Earlier this week, actually about almost exactly a week ago, a very prominent Vice News article came out documenting the fact that, quote, the Mormon Church had denounced Tim Ballard for some morally unacceptable activities. This was picked up by the Deseret News. It was picked up by Fox 4 or
Fox 13, ABC 4.
ABC 4. It was picked up by all of the major newspapers, including the Salt Lake Tribune. And a lot of people are saying, whoa, this is a supposedly official statement from the church saying that Tim Ballard is engaged in morally unacceptable activities, what some would call a de facto excommunication via tabloid. And there was a lot of people that said this was everything from fake news to maybe a PR guy in the office building that was politically motivated, to maybe influence from Mitt Romney above, from the Senate, putting pressure on the church office building to release some kind of statement that was either rogue or else not dependable. Because it was very out of sync with the church's normal communication on large-scale affairs like this and large-scale people, which usually comes out of the church newsroom. Also, the original article did not name the name of the person that gave the official statement, which is also out of cadence with the normal protocols of the church. So it created a lot of confusion. And we can understand that confusion with a lot of people, especially this was literally happening the exact same week Russell Brand was being accused of things. All of us remembered the Covington Catholic kids being accused of things. All of us had to endure 2016 to 2020 when we were forced to believe via these exact same newspapers that our president was secretly a Russian asset who had been flipped to service in the Kremlin in the last vestiges of the USSR during the Cold War. There was a lot of people that were very skeptical. However, as we started investigating, because on this channel, we're we're keeping all avenues open, and we believe in, even if the media doesn't, we believe in verifying those things and those claims before we pass judgment. We started digging, and we were able to verify that indeed, yes, this came through church PR, specifically through a man named Doug Anderson. And now the question is, did his statement represent the heart and mind of the brethren, or did it not? So all of a sudden people start inquiring into what are his leanings and what are the church protocols. And that's pretty much seems to be the crux of this argument, are what are the church protocols and what can we expect in the future on this?
And one thing that I think with this situation is, like, I know Kwaku expressed the worry the other day, hey, if the church is going to respond to Tim Ballard in this way, what's to stop them to responding to anyone else this way, right? And the thing I think we're forgetting when we consider that question, though it is a valid question and a real one to be considering, is just the magnitude of what's going on with the Tim Ballard story, right?
Yeah. And
what the church may have known in order to have them make the statement that they did, right? And having, I mean, it's still up in the air. We haven't seen all of the information yet, but even just the more recent article about the sexual abuse is a pretty harsh one, and the evidence does seem to be mounting up against Tim, right? So I think,
well, when you say
it was
not the evidence, the allegations, because nobody's gone on record yet.
Okay, that's fair.
Is nobody's gone on record yet.
Yeah, I think the way that things are going, the allegations stacking up against him the way that they are, it helps make more sense of what the church did, even if it still feels way more extreme than anything we've seen the church do before, you know?
Yeah. So I can tell you, and then Jacob, feel free to chime in if there was anything that you figured out with Luke Hansen recently. But if you want, I can name some of the things that I've been able to confirm and or deny now, right? So I was able to talk to everything from high-ranking officials at the Spear Fund to high-ranking officials in Utah governance, everything from campaign managers to janitors that bumped into Tim Ballard in the halls of school one day. And so far I've been able to glean from my collective witness model of speaking with people at OUR, that Tim Ballard did leave OUR, and the instigating factor of that seems to have been the allegations of impropriety. Now, that's not a smoking gun, because anybody who produces film or television or any kind of marketing effort knows that he could have just as easily said, look, I've got this organization up and running. If my celebrity is starting to bring the smoke like this, I should go out and focus on what I do best, which is fundraising. And that really could have been the catalyst for him saying, I'm going to go start the Spear Fund. So it doesn't look good for him. It's not a smoking gun. To me, it ends up just being another neutral data point. Okay. I was able to confirm that some of the things we've heard about him lying about the success or non-success of some of his missions, I was able to debunk that. There's a lot of anti-Tim Ballard smoke out there saying that, it's false, the story about his necklace, or the fact that he was given kind of a dog tag necklace, or a book by one of the kids that's mentioned in The Sound of Freedom, and that's all made up, and that's not true, and he's a liar, and this is demonstrative of how big of a liar Tim Ballard is, as the Mormon Church encourages you to lie for the Lord, and that whole line of thought. Well, I was able to talk to high-ranking officials of the Spear Fund who actually took pictures, and I haven't gotten permission to show those pictures with faces on the screen, but later on I may be able to show the actual items. But I have seen people holding the signed book and the necklace and the dog tag that is mentioned in the movie and is supposedly a very kind of like a sacred artifact to his life story of Tim Ballard that seems to, by physical evidence, indeed have happened. So a lot of people that say that's a smoking gun of his dishonesty, I think they forget the necessity, even if it was dishonest, of making what's called a MacGuffin in Hollywood films. Like, sometimes there has to be an object that embodies a struggle, right? And even if it's made up, well, guess what? The dinosaurs in Jurassic Park weren't real either, guys. But
Wait, whoa,
yeah.
what?
But I was able to actually confirm.
They actually were. That's why they've held up.
Yeah, that exactly.
Not real.
And
but-
then also today, we're going to play some of these clips. Today, Tim Ballard doubled down. And if he's right and he's innocent, I think the average layman is very convinced by the person that says, investigate the crap out of me, which seemed to be the ethos of his message. And we're going to play that here. Meanwhile, a lot of the allegations against him are still continuing to be made anonymously and without any real specifics, which kind of seems to be frustrating. Today, a big-time podcaster who's very popular in Utah and right-wing circles released a Facebook video that I believe a lot of people were able to watch, in which he claimed to have spoken to one of the self-proclaimed victims of Tim Ballard, who gave him a compelling story. So that's another data point that's neither a smoking gun, nor is it evidence of innocence. It's just another data point to be considered. So we're going to play both of those really fast, and they're going to react to these and see what you guys think. So first and foremost, here we've got one Tim Ballard, who is in Washington, D.C., speaking directly to the audience. Tim, go.
The Emancipation Proclamation, which was very difficult. He was being lied about. He was having so much pressure upon him. Don't do it. His advisors told him because.
So for those of you that weren't able to watch the beginning of this, I've queued it up a couple seconds in. He's in front of a house that Abraham Lincoln lived in when he was signing the Emancipation Proclamation that is in Washington, D.C., where he is doing his American Covenant tour, fulfilling obligations that he has with ticket holders for that event. And so he's going to compare a situation here quickly to Abraham Lincoln, and then I'll let you guys see what he says.
The North may not accept it. He believed that if he did it, it would lead to the end of slavery. So lots of pressure and having to make a decision. I currently am under fire with false allegations from sources that we have not been able to determine yet. I'm sure you've seen some of this in the press.
Okay, now, before we say that, I'm not trying to say I'm debunking Tim Ballard here, but I think we know what the sources are. Vice News. You know what I'm saying? They've got 7 headlines on this guy right now.
I think he's talking about their sources. Right?
Yes. And so we know what they are, and then supposedly 7 women, which, as we spoke about earlier, could be based off of a claim that he made when somebody tried to accuse him previously. He said, I have 7 operatives that I've worked with that would be willing to defend me. So we don't know if maybe that's just an honest mistake in the media, or if maybe that's somebody just trying to maliciously twist words. Again, no smoking guns here, only data points to consider. Let him continue.
And I want to read you the statement that the Spear Fund, an organization dedicated to rescuing children, by partnering with multiple organizations around the world. We just made deals in Central America so that we can target those traffickers who are hurting children. They will soon be residents in the United States because they're trying to get them there. I testified about this at Congress last week. I called out the president for the policies that are causing this pain. And I also, at that moment, admitted that, yes, I am considering running for public office and determining whether I could fight the fight better there. It's not a coincidence that just within 3 days of that, all hell breaks loose in the press and false allegations are brought upon me.
Okay, so we're going to pause right there. And I'd say that was probably the real crux of the argument for the initial confusion and also the initial skepticism that many people had. Because within 3 days of it getting out that, Tim Ballard might be running for this seat that will be now vacant by Mitt Romney, who just announced, surprisingly, unlike all of his other Senator Boomer counterparts, that he's not going to run into his 90s, when his brain stops functioning in the middle of press conferences like Mitch McConnell, or when he literally just has to like reboot in the middle of the state Senate hall like Dianne Feinstein, or just he pulled us a solid and said, in my 70s is a good time to leave, so, good on him. However, that does create a power vacuum and people want to jump in. And so, of course, with that power vacuum, there's going to become a media machine, both for and against a potential candidate. And as he said, yes, within days of announcing, he's all of a sudden embroiled in a scandal. So for a lot of people that were very skeptical of that scandal, well, there's a big reason. It seemed to have been too many precipitated by politics. Okay. Interestingly enough, we watched the Vice News reporters on the Mormon Stories podcast, live stream, where they said we had given this to the church weeks in advance. And not only were they surprised that they responded, because they're probably used to getting a mature thanks but no thanks, that indicates that long before Tim Ballard was testifying in front of Congress and was pseudo announcing that he was going to run, this news article was in the works, which would give some credence to the Vice people. So again, no smoking guns, just data points to consider.
So that's something that, and sorry, I'm driving at the moment, so it's kind of bad visual quality, but that was a part of it that I found a little shocking, because the timing on all of this when it comes to the church is the part that's more curious to me. Because if indeed the church had known about this weeks ago, it's odd that the first place that they would contact and give a statement to is Vice News without going to Tim Ballard, right? But now there's a possibility Tim's just lying. He's just lying and saying the church hasn't talked to me about this, but the church had talked to him about it. But if the church had not talked to him, that's odd, in my opinion, that the first place the church would go is to Vice News to out him, and then, without going to him first. But the other thing about this that is disturbing is, okay, so depending on what Tim Ballard did, if he did something really serious and egregious, that would have been grounds for church membership council or church discipline, and the church generally goes again to the person first. The part of this that is the most odd to me, and maybe there's a perfectly good explanation for it, but it just leaves some question marks in my mind. Did the church even go to Tim? Because, even like scripturally, like you have a problem with your brother, you go to them first and see if you can fix it, right? You don't immediately jump to treat them as a publican and a sinner, right? So that's something that's been on my mind throughout all this. And I'm not, just so everyone knows, I'm not a Tim Ballard like defender. In fact, I've been skeptical of Tim Ballard.
Jacob's been very skeptical, actually. Yeah.
Well,
and my bias is towards the church. You guys, like, you ever seen my channel?
yeah. So anyway, Jacob is a faithful member. He's not some kind of, Exmo anti-Mormon person, but he is also very skeptical of very large systems that are run by human beings. And so, any large organization, be it OUR or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, he might look twice at. Bringing the Shadow, you got a question?
Well, not really a question. I have a statement. I have a comment.
Okay, what's your comment?
So I agree with Jacob Hansen, and before we even started the very first live stream, Kwaku was all, Tim Ballard, and I was kind of like, I don't know. I don't know much about him. I don't know. I was kind of on the fence, right?
Okay.
Now we're finding out that the church knew about this for weeks, right? Could they not have made a more eloquent statement? Can we all agree the wording was kind of weird and it wasn't really like well thought out? Like it seemed like they had a minute to make that statement. Well, I don't know.
That's why I'm saying
I think it feels more political than we've heard the church sound in a long time. Part of why I think people were confused when it first came out.
Yes. And part of the reason why this live stream can still get 800 people or 700 people and growing in it is because there's still so much more questions. The more details we get from Vice, the more questions we have for the church instead of the less questions that we have, because that is the crux of the argument. If they knew for weeks, why did they opt for the public excommunication when, if the purpose is distancing from an individual person, why couldn't they have handled it the way they handled Richard Rich in the Living Scriptures videos in the 90s? You know what I'm saying? With a carefully crafted message that says, hey, look, there's a separation of church and state. Any time something high profile is done with excommunication, which to a certain extent, this kind of was a de facto excommunication, it's usually done in a much more well thought out way. We haven't had something like this in living memory, is something that Luke Hansen brought up. Sorry, Jacob, do you want to say something?
I was gonna say real quick, but let me just say that in all of this, more information may come out that totally makes all this totally clear.
Yeah.
And it'll clear it all up. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not throwing the church under the bus here. I'm more confused than anything else. And I think a lot of people are as well.
For a lot of people, though,
clarity to understand what happened.
For a lot of people, though, that are doing the mental experiment of, let's just say it's all true, things still aren't adding up. Because, like, for me, for example, let's just say it is true. Let's just say Tim Ballard is just another celebrity who got there out of extreme charisma, and he had a pretty good batting average. He saved several hundred kids, but it got to his head, so he started name dropping the Ballard thing, and then he started getting too handsy with girls, and he joined the pantheon of men who've let their celebrity get to their head until they ruined their marriage and their own reputation. And he's just another Greek Euripides, or who's the guy that flew, Icarus, that flew too close to the sun until finally he had his horrible fall from grace. Okay.
Are you talking about Congress? Were you talking about Congress?
Yes, exactly. Well, let's just say that was all true. Why isn't he excommunicated before especially knowing there was a 3-week period? Let me tell you.
Well, and let me run a quick scenario as a possibility. So
and then I got to get to this evidence that I've promised our audience.
And super chats.
And super chats, yes.
I got to take a quick break, but my quick thing to defend the church is maybe the church has been talking to him this whole time. There's a disciplinary council that's already in process and has been for several weeks. And Tim has just been full on lying through his teeth. And that the church has been in touch with him, and so we all just are operating under the assumption that that process has not already begun. Okay, that is a possibility.
At the same time, by the way, that represents very much Nathaniel Givens' position. At the same time, you guys have both been in bishoprics, and church disciplinary councils are usually done pretty quickly, pretty efficiently. On decisions of morality, it's very not often too gray of an area. And if the person doesn't want to show up, the elders do it without him. True or not true?
True.
Okay.
It's true, but I will say, with a high profile case like this, I could see it being taken a little bit more. That's
a possibility, but I'm just saying, for even those of us that are running the thought experiment of, wow, what if it is just all true? I can see why a layman familiar with the church but unfamiliar with Tim Ballard may think, okay, this isn't adding up. Keepers of the chats, Brittany the Shadow, please read us some of the super chats and let us respond to people with their answers. And I'm going to get to some of the investigation we've been engaged in over the week. Okay, Brittany, hit it.
I don't think I can scroll back as far as we need to.
Oh, really? Okay, well, let me scroll back then really fast.
There's a lot of people in the chat.
There's a lot of people in the chat.
I think the first one, I don't think there was a comment. I think there was just a donation.
Yeah, the first one, thank you very much. It was indeed just a contribution, and it was from Advantage Consult. They have balloons on their super chat, so I can't tell who says it, but it's from Advantage Consult. Dustin at Advantage Consulting. Thank you very much. All right. Then we have another super chat here. Thank you very much to Sterling Smith. Hey, he just gave us a super chat with no question. And then Western Man says, an episode about mission stories would be cool. Hey, Western Man, believe it or not, we are actually on that already. I had my first one scheduled for a really interesting couple that are both returned missionaries that we're going to tell some cool mission stories this week. However, unfortunately, I believe they had some automotive problems or something like that, so they couldn't drive to the studio. But we are going to start our really cool mission stories podcast here pretty soon. Might even be a live stream. We don't know. Also, Forrest Schultz says, is Jacob in the upside down? Maybe more figuratively than literally, but that's a possibility, and he will be returning to us. Russell Reeves says, love you guys. Thanks for seeking truth first. Yes, we are truth seekers. All truth will be circumscribed in one great whole. And Brigham Young said, we do not care from which font the truth does come from. We seek after truth. And Bud Gillette, thank you very much, Bud Gillette, just for throwing a super chat our way. Thank you very much, my man. So anyway, again, back to the pursuit of truth.
So let me highlight. There was one chat that came up from one of the trolls. By the way, guys, if you're tired of the trolls, because man, there's many of them, you can always right click and block them in your in the chat feed, so you don't have to see what they're saying, and then they'll all just be talking to each other and thinking people are listening, but they're not.
Okay.
But one of the comments that came up was that Ward Radio is just upset that the church talked to Vice News. Okay, so that's actually kind of true. Of all the outlets that the church could have talked to, could have coordinated with, could have used their own newsroom, they chose to go to a semi-tabloid that is overtly hostile to the church and all believers and all of the values that the church espouses, and has been trying to prove, that the church is hiding abuse. Remember, they're part of the church hides abuse conspiracy group. That's Vice News. Okay, so yeah, it was a little strange that the church would release a statement exclusively to Vice News. And I don't think we can be blamed for thinking that's kind of weird. Even if everything is true, even if all the allegations end up being true, it is still going to be confusing why the church chose to go to Vice News of all places instead of making a more formal statement through their newsroom, which they almost always do. So
also,
well, I mean, to be fair, it was a response to Vice News, right? So Vice reached out with a bunch of articles saying, hey, what's your comment on this, right? So I feel like the church did have their hands tied in a way, because if they had no comment in there, then it could make it look like they were supporting him. So I think they did have to figure out some form of response. But if they really did have a long time, like the Vice reporters said, then I would kind of expect it to be a little more even-tempered,
But and is that true, though? Is it true? Like, I'm trying to think to myself, let's say it's all true.
Well,
let's say all the allegations are true. Does that actually make the church look bad? Like, so who cares? So Tim Ballard messed up.
So here's
why does that make the church look bad? I don't understand.
So but by the way, also just here's the test about, media bias. This is a famous media bias test. If you just put in Tim Ballard in the search bar, there's 995 articles, 87 videos, 2 shows, and 43 partner contents, right?
In which search bar is this?
Just in Vice News. All right.
The Vice News search bar.
Yeah. If you put in the LDS Church or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and, so on and so forth, you get 1,569 article hits, 25 videos, no shows, but 23 bits of partner content. Now, let's just say they really are worried about, kids. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Put in Epstein Island. You know what I'm saying? Let's just put in Epstein Island, see what comes
sure
up.
They're all over that. I'm sure
0 shows, less articles, less videos. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's you can do some kind of funny searches here to try and like figure out their leanings. But when you read all the articles about Tim Ballard, they're all anti-Tim Ballard, and when you read all the articles about the church, they're all very, they're not friendly to him. Okay,
and that is one thing. I think my initial suspicion of all of this is based in the fact that I feel like Tim Ballard himself has kind of set himself up to be representing fighting child trafficking, right? So in a way, it feels like an attack on Tim Ballard feels like an attack on child trafficking, which may not be the case. I think the allegations are lining up. No, this is more about just Tim Ballard.
Well, and the reason
but
why
it also, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, sorry to interrupt you, Brad, but the reason why you feel that way is because when Sound of Freedom came out over a month before this whole scandal did, we noticed this very strange division that went straight
Yes.
down cyberspace.
Yes.
If you're a Democrat, especially a social progressive, thou shalt hate Sound of Freedom.
Yeah.
And if thou art a Republican and thou art especially a MAGA conservative, thou shalt not only love Sound of Freedom, but go pay it forward so other people that don't have the money can go watch it in movie theaters as well. And there was no just like, oh, I'm going to go watch a popcorn flick about a supposedly unimpeachable premise, saving children from human traffickers. You know, that
Yeah.
seems as unimpeachable a basic premise as, I don't know, RoboCop. You know, like you need police in urban environments riddled by crime. I don't know. Ninja Turtles, the bad guys should have superheroes going against them. For some reason, we couldn't just all agree that, okay, this is a simply basically good movie premise that we all should be able to go and enjoy as Americans. It was immediately split down the center. And what was splitting it down the center? Predominantly driven by the media. So I could see why there was skepticism. Let's address a couple of super chats. Brittany, keepers of the chats.
Drew Stevens, love your guys' content. Thanks for all you do to fight the anti-Mormon content.
Oh, thank you. We do a lot of
Thank you,
debunkings on
Drew.
this channel. And then who else is there?
Oh, you say it, Carden. You got to say it. Carolyn Wright.
Oh, Carolyn Wright Gaines music.
There you go.
Yeah.
She says, Satan is the author of confusion. We should let time give us the facts and not make accusations without all the info. Love your channel. Thank you.
That's the most measured
Carolyn's right.
response. Yeah,
She's right.
by far.
Yes.
You know,
It's-
the biggest
and-
tragedy in this whole thing would be conflating Tim Ballard the man with Tim Ballard's cause,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
would be women who may have been treated.
Yes.
If it ends up being true, there could be women out there who have been objectified or abused or harassed or whatever. If the allegations end up being true, that'd be tragic. So those two things, conflating the man with the cause and real women who were volunteering to go help end child trafficking. These are probably pretty cool women.
Yeah.
Who may have been
Well, he
mistreated.
did a podcast with one of them. Like one of the things this is another reason why in my investigation of this, I've gotten so frustrated because I have been approached by people who socially knew him in college. We're buddy with him. In fact, you know what I'm saying? People that were familiar with love interests and girlfriends and so on and so forth. And I've had everything from people that say, you know, I no longer like Tim Ballard, you know what I'm saying? And I have been able to talk to, I'm trying to make sure that I cover the identities of these people who I've promised not to divulge, right? But I've talked with people that have said, I was there in parties, you know, and my friend dated him and we talked about it often. And I've, you know, I don't like Tim Ballard because of, and then there's no smoking gun of any of these accusations. It's just kind of this vague, I'm no longer a fan, which kind of leaves you to think, okay, well, is it because now he's famous and he's an ex of yours and you can't be in love with the famous ex or else you look like the pining spurned lover? Or is it because he did something bad? Well, what did he do bad? And the only thing I've been able to glean that remotely resembles any of these accusations, both in the official statement from the church and in kind of the insinuations of sexual abuse later, is that at parties in college, he would say that he was that he was M. Russell Ballard's grandson.
Oh.
Yes, that apparently in college, when he approached people, he had been overheard saying he was M. Russell Ballard's grandson, right? Now, again, that's not a smoking gun, though, because when I say he would say that, my immediate question is, okay, well, I jokingly say all the time that I'm Perry Ellis's grandson. Like people ask me, what's your name? I'm at the DMV. What's your name? Oh, it's Cardin Ellis. And they look up at me like, what? Did you just say card again? You know, I'm like, no, it's like carton of milk, but just with a D. And they're like, oh, okay. And they write it down. I'm like, and then Ellis, traditional spelling, like Perry Ellis. And then they look up and like, oh, any relation? I'm like, yeah, I taught him everything he knows. Look at my shirt. It's a silly dad joke that I've repeated a million times where I claim to be Perry Ellis's grandson. But like, it should be obvious that I'm not, to such a degree that if I hear that in college he was possibly joking as a charismatic individual about being related to the other Ballard, to me, that's a far cry from
Well,
a fundraising pitch 20 years before he becomes famous, especially when there's no other recordings around of fundraisers or people willing to go on record saying, I'm a high-profile real estate agent. I was at a fundraiser with the 17 richest people in Utah, and I overheard him say the church supports this mission.
I think the key to this particular accusation has to do with the whiteboard, right? That was in the Vice News article.
Yes.
I think that is kind of the crux of where people are pulling, hey, he's using M. Russell Ballard's name because he has it on this whiteboard as one of the co-owners, but labeled silent on that whiteboard, right? So I think that's more where it's coming from than just the college level accusations.
I'd like somebody to come out and say, I donated to OUR because I thought M. Russell Ballard was the, he was the co-founder, he was the co-sponsor of it. And now I'm learning he's not, and I'm outraged.
Well, see, and that's what I'm saying. It's like, to me, yes, we all saw the picture. And by the way, the Vice News article wasn't the first time that picture has come up, right?
Yeah.
That was previous.
That's just where I saw it.
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken here, and by the way, I've seen so much evidence now on this case that I need to start keeping file books. Okay. But I do believe that picture was floating around ex-Mormon subreddit with other of the Lynn Packer findings that have been released on YouTube previously. And well, what does silent mean? The church's official statement in and of itself said that M. Russell Ballard had a relationship with Tim Ballard over a shared goal of keeping God's children safe. And so if they have a relationship of the donations, both in kind, have evidence of work or evidence of a donation out there in cyberspace so it can be checked by society at large. And so silent could also mean like, stay silent on this. We're not allowed to say that there is a connection because that would be a violation of 501c3 law. Anybody that's worked in politics knows that super PACs are not allowed to speak with official campaigns. And you can give money to super PACs for a candidate that you cannot give with the maximum donation requirements of their official campaign. And they're literally not allowed to speak. If somebody has a video of a representative from a super PAC speaking with a representative of a campaign, and that makes it to the FEC, the Federal Elections Committee, oh, that super PAC is getting dissolved or that candidate is getting an ethics violation. So what does silent mean on the board? It's not a smoking gun. For those that hate Tim Ballard, think he's a bad person, it's evidence enough for them to keep thinking what they're thinking and confirmation bias kicks in. For those that love Tim Ballard, it's an uncomfortable data point, but it's not a smoking gun. I don't feel like there's enough evidence just to hang a hat on that right there. Maybe it doesn't look good for a cynical person. I get that. But again, it's not a smoking gun and nobody is willing to go on the record. This is something that is in Tim Ballard's favor on the other side. All of these accusations against him are vagaries, morally unacceptable behavior. Okay, well, what is that? Define it. The next day, Tim Ballard comes out and says, these allegations are untrue. Basically, bring it on. Then we get a couple more new Vice News articles that are saying, oh, well, women have complained. Okay, well, which ones? What's the specific complaint here? We're not sure. And then he comes out and says, they're all not true. I have friends that will testify against this. Effectively, bring it on again. And right now we're just dealing basically with braggadocio. We're dealing with saber rattling. The media is like saber rattling. So-and-so's a bad person and we have anonymous sources. And then Tim Ballard is saber rattling, saying, bring it on. I'm not afraid of your investigation. That would lead a layman who wasn't there and couldn't see what went on to maybe think, wow, the guy that's responding to vagaries with specifics might carry the day. We don't know. Others who just trust the moral unimpeachability of Vice News may say like, oh, I think it's got to be real because Vice, they could never say anything bad without getting sued, right? Which I don't think correctly represents the current media landscape. But anyway, we're going to go back to letting Tim Ballard speak for himself and finish saying what he wants to say on his video.
Before we get to that, I just want to point out when I was reading the stuff around the whiteboard, I did think like, hey, what if this was just a plan? You know, like, hey, the plan
Yes.
is to have M. Russell Ballard involved in some way, right? And even the text message clarifying it's kind of talking about the future. So I could see this being a thing where he's like, yeah, we're going to do this, and we want to get him involved, right? In a way that maybe lines up in a way that he is telling the truth when he's saying he wasn't trading on his name, saying he's supporting it, but still doesn't look like something M. Russell Ballard would have wanted to be involved in, right? Based on his response here.
Well, and that would also give credence to this image that I pulled up from Axios Salt Lake City, saying, of note, the church's statement in Vice claims it, quote, never endorsed, supported, or represented OUR, Tim Ballard, or any projects associated with them. I actually was able to reach out to people who had indeed worked for OUR for lengthy periods of time, that had assisted Tim Ballard both publicly, privately, people that worked with other 501c3s with him. I've talked to myriad people familiar with both this statement and the financial, social, and physical dealings that the church has had with OUR. And as Axios puts it, there's a reality check here. Axios found multiple laudatory references, and they produced links to those laudatory references to the group on the church's website before they were removed this weekend. And then second bullet point, the church publishing company also printed some of Ballard's books and sold them via the church bookstore. Some of my friends on the inside of OUR familiar with their finances also said there's been official donations here, you know, that also cannot be overlooked. So this idea that it never endorsed, supported, or represented OUR, Tim Ballard, or any projects associated with them, this is why some people were skeptical, because anybody who's familiar with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and Tim Ballard's celebrity over the past decade know that, yeah, they're tangential and the church keeps its distance, but it's an overstatement to say that they've never been associated with him or any projects. Such an overstatement that some people are thinking, did some rogue church PR knucklehead do this? Because that's such a blatantly on its face false comment. Was somebody not thinking? Was this made up by AI? Was this a rough draft from some 18-year-old intern that doesn't know what's been happening between Tim Ballard and the church for the past 15 years that accidentally said this? Jacob.
I was going to say one thing about this is that someone made this point the other day that it's different to say that Deseret Book sells your book, but I believe that they published his book. Like they were the ones who were behind it. So that, I mean, yeah, I'm with you, man. Like this is a level of support that seems more than just tangential. And it's not like the church doesn't vet who they publish, right? Like the church had.
I have a buddy that tried to get a killer book made, and I won't say what version, what kind of book this was, because it's his story to tell, not mine. But they reserve the right to consider your proposal for almost 4 to 6 months. You don't know if you're rejected from Deseret Book until it's been 6 months.
Oh, correct. That's absolutely correct.
That you haven't heard from them. So it's like their vetting process is obviously robust and in depth. So for them to have 3 weeks, supposedly, according to Vice, who we believe, to successfully craft a statement and then say that they had no association with Tim Ballard, meanwhile his books are hanging on the wall in Deseret Book, and there's articles about his organization and his exploits on the official church website, that at best creates confusion amongst the laity, saying, wait, hold on. We're used to unimpeachable statements from the church.
Question.
Yes.
Can you still buy his books at Deseret Book? Has anyone verified that?
I'll try right now.
Yeah, we do this in real time. There's been a back and forth.
I believe you can, but yeah, go ahead and check it.
Okay. So anyway, this all started because he said he doesn't know where the accusations are coming from, and now we're circling back to Tim Ballard. Do you have something to say, Jonah, before we go back to Tim?
I guess it's still just fuzzy to me why the church would be so spooked by that. I guess when I see people on the shelves at Deseret Book or doing these projects, if one of them ends up being some celebrity who totally messed up and did something creepy, I wouldn't be like, oh, this means that Elder Ballard
DB
was
Cooper
behind it and the church is false. Like, I guess
Dude, DB Cooper jumped out of a plane after threatening to blow it up with a steel suitcase and threatening the stewardesses in the plane and took a parachute out the back end. And he was a BYU graduate of their criminal justice system. Like DB Cooper didn't get.
What's worse is that what this does, unfortunately, is it makes people worry that there's some sort of political angle to this. I don't want to go there. I don't think that that's what it is.
Oh, I think
but
the
at the same
church
time,
is
it's
in
like
politics.
Well, even if it's not a political angle, just any angle. Like, I worry. I'm like, okay, well, what if I say something that I dislike about the church? For example, I've been very vocal on this channel that I think that we're failing our young men. I think the Boy Scout program was a lot bigger help than people realized. And when we got rid of it, it created a much larger vacuum than people anticipated. And we were promised some kind of replacement within a couple of years. And it's been 5, 6, 7, 8 years that the Boy Scouts have been gone. And we don't have a replacement program similar to the Young Women of Excellence program. And I think it's costing us in our young men's program. If I say that now, does a rogue intern that doesn't represent the heart and mind of the apostles, or maybe does an apostle who didn't like my opinion, get to excommunicate me via tabloid before my bishop and stake president?
First off, he's not being excommunicated, just to be clear, because you've now said that twice, and I think people might get confused.
Sorry.
Because effectively, it was the way that Glenn Beck put it, but he also took his tweets down just to be, I think, in interest of clarity.
Functionally,
but to report quickly on the Deseret book thing, you can still get his book. The print is out of stock, but the ebook is still up there. Published by Shadow Mountain, though, Jacob. So Shadow Mountain Press is a smaller press here in Utah.
Okay, then let's correct.
Well,
let's
the reason why I say
the church does not publish his books.
Okay,
let's correct that record.
Yeah, I get that. So the church didn't publish it, but the reason why I say
Cardin, I totally get your concern, but at the same time, none of the people that you listed were saying that a specific apostle was condoning their behavior, right?
Yeah, they were only terrorizing entire airplanes.
Yeah, but not saying that it was the church approving of it, right? So that's why I think this one pulls in the church response.
Does that make sense? That would make more sense to me. If it ends up being, and it hasn't been proven, but if it ends up being that, he was touting Elder Ballard as supporting this and being his buddy on this and being all with it, then I can see why the church would treat that a lot differently than DB Cooper. By the way, I live in the place where DB Cooper supposedly jumped out of the plane, actually. Dude,
is it true?
They found his money just a couple miles from my house on the bank of the river. They found his money.
Yeah, I was about going to say they didn't find the briefcase, but they found some of the dollar bills. And didn't they find a necklace from one of the women on the airplane as well that he stole or something?
I bet you DB Cooper's watching this stream right now.
That is true.
Am I the only one that doesn't know who DB Cooper is?
You know who DB Cooper is?
No.
You're too young.
Catch Me If You Can guy, right?
No, DB Cooper predated him.
No. Brittany, have you watched the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with Megan Fox?
Yes.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway.
Just maybe a month ago, Cardin showed me.
Yeah, I'm a big Ninja Turtles fan. In fact, hopefully we'll get Kevin Eastman on the show. So anyway, here we go. Let's let Tim Ballard finish.
Okay, then we have lots of super chats.
Okay, then lots of super chats.
Yeah.
And because of that, and because of the fact that, like Lincoln, who was in this house, I will not stop, I will not give up, no matter the pressures upon me, no matter the pain to me or to my family, because of lies, I will not. And to that end, I'd like to read you this statement. Tim Ballard issues statement affirming...
Okay, before you go any farther, it's like, I love that you saved a lot of kids, Tim, but comparing yourself to Abraham Lincoln while wearing the Abraham Lincoln shirt and then standing in front of his house, I can appreciate references to Christ suffering, Joseph Smith suffering, so on and so forth. Even I would not have chosen all three of those things. Maybe the Lincoln reference, yes. Maybe standing in front of the house, but the T-shirt, the reference, and the quote, I don't know. It's a little bit much for me.
I'll be honest. I've always found Tim's a little bit over the topness with the histrionics and big name dropping and everything is part of this big sort of history thing that he's a part of. I've always found that a little bit off-putting.
Okay,
Oh,
look,
oh,
look,
okay.
I don't
look.
know, with
When you
everything-
rescue 7,000 children from human trafficking, you get the right to be a little bit over the top. Okay,
was
now
gonna
if
say-
you harass women, in your
I can see that, Jonah.
take that right away.
All right,
Yeah.
all right.
You
I
saved
have not
7,000
saved
kids,
that
like,
many
okay.
children, but I'm about to spank some of the kids in the other room if they don't go to bed.
No,
By the way, all the Barnes children, it's time to go to bed. It's time to go to bed.
And by
guys.
the way, at the end of the day, even though we all joke around that it's kind of cringe that he would use the T-shirt, the apartment behind him,
I don't think it's that cringe.
and the quote.
With everything coming out, I think that's like the least of our problems right now.
Well, and
That's fair.
and no,
That is fair. I'm with Brittany on that one.
well, let me finish my thought. I actually think that works in his favor, because really the only undocumented specific accusation against him yet that has a person making the accusation is the church accusing him of using M. Russell Ballard's name inappropriately. And when you have him in front of the link,
and engaging in immoral behavior.
Yeah,
And
well, yeah,
that's in
and
the
it's
statement.
true.
and
True.
engaging in morally unacceptable behavior, right? Well, and the kind of the insinuation was that name dropping was the morally unacceptable behavior.
The betrayal. Yeah.
And so
No, that if you look at the
It was
statement
part of it.
carefully, it says very clearly it's an and statement. That was something that Luke and I talked about on my channel, is that if you look at the statement
Yes.
carefully, it says that there's a problem with basically using Elder Ballard's name and morally unacceptable
Okay.
behavior. They're not linked.
Okay, no, I get that, but I'm just saying the way the layman might read it, the only real specific accusation that you can hang a hat on saying, okay, the church is accusing him of having done X, okay? Because morally unacceptable is a vagary. Whereas name dropping inappropriately the name of one of our elders, that's a specific. So the only specific accusation we have still to this day is him name dropping inappropriately. Well, when you show yourself to be a showman who wears a Lincoln shirt while standing in front of a Lincoln apartment while quoting Lincoln, you come across as being a little bit over the top.
Yeah,
So-
you kind of a name dropper.
So maybe
That's a
it's
good
like
point.
it's
That's a
like,
good
okay,
point.
well, did the guy accidentally just go a little too far? Because let me tell you, the Abraham Lincoln T-shirt, yeah, that's a little too far. The Abraham Lincoln T-shirt plus the comparison to Abraham Lincoln, that's 2 steps too far. Throw in the apartment, that's 3 steps too far. But at the end of the day, taking a step or two above what others would feel comfortable, that's not reaching the threshold yet
If you're
of an official statement.
But what if he goes out and says, hey guys, you know what? I'm published, or I'm the church sells my books. You can find me on their website. Elder Ballard has blessed my child. He's stating facts. He's not, depending on the thing that matters is this. What is the specific thing that he did?
Well, that's why I'm saying specifics versus
in
vagaries.
mention.
We only have one
Yes, and
specific
that's-
so far.
We're in vagary land.
And
it's
yes,
annoying.
and the optics of his 2 statements being pretty over the top, they lend credence to his side of the argument actually over others. His defense. So let's let him finish his defense, and we got to get to super chats because our audience is opining here and they deserve our attention.
Commitment to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Salt Lake City, September 18th, 2023. The Spear Fund, an organization funding and collaborating with a coalition of experts, organizations, and concerned citizens from around the globe to end human trafficking in our time, is releasing a statement on behalf of Senior Advisor Tim Ballard. And the statement reads, rescuing kids and fighting child trafficking is an ugly and dark business, especially when, as the result of my work for more than 20 years, we continue to expose members of powerful, well-funded child trafficking cartels. Evil pedophiles, traffickers will stop at nothing, and they have allies. Allies in government, in the media, in big corporations, and even in public institutions. They continue to lie about me and attempt to destroy my good name, and they will never stop. I want everyone to know that I and our vast army of supporters will likewise never stop. We will keep fighting for the vulnerable all over the globe, and we know that the truth will always prevail. I am a faithful member in good standing in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I believe in Jesus Christ, the Holy Scriptures, and I believe in our faith with all of my heart. That, no matter what, will never change. Now, it's been alleged that an unnamed LDS church spokesperson issued a statement about me through a tabloid.
Okay, this is the only one where I was like, Tim,
Wow.
have you not been here the past couple of weeks? The unnamed church spokesman, he was named in the second article,
named.
was he not?
Name is
Yeah,
dug in.
he was named by Fox 13 later.
Yeah, and that statement was corroborated by Deseret News, which is owned by the church. So I didn't really know how to receive that data point.
Well, and here's something I didn't like about that, what he just said.
Yeah.
His defense seemed to go into sort of conspiracy, like, hey, you're going to hear all these things, but it's sort of like there's big cartels and money and government, and there's like, it's sort of this, there's the new world order that's out to get us. And that's ultimately like don't believe anything you hear, because it's sort of that gaslighting that can happen where people get really into conspiracy
Well, I don't know if I'd say gaslighting. Gaslighting is questioning somebody's insanity if they don't believe your nature of reality.
Yeah, but the thing is it's sort of like
this?
if they come out with hard evidence, right? Like a recording or something like that. Tim Ballard, is he going to go down this route of like, that's AI, it's not even real?
No. Hold on a second.
They released
your
a
eyes.
screenshot. They released a screenshot of the email from Doug Anderson's email, right?
Yeah, like we were able to see who it was from. And so I was going to say, to me, this was neither for or against Tim Ballard. I actually
you
view
replay
this
Because I'm trying to tell. Was his thing that it was?
he was saying there's evil
released?
forces.
But was he saying like, hey, the problem is that it was released with no name, or was he saying that we still don't know?
No, he was
who it's
saying
from?
an unnamed church representative, and that church representative has been named. And I think it's been part of the conversation on social media and also in other following Vice News articles that have now included it. So if he says it's, quote, unnamed, I think either he misspoke or have you not been around for this week? I guarantee you've got interns reading this stuff at the Spear campaign and at OUR. Like it's not unnamed. So I don't know if he misspoke or what, but that data point, I was like, come on, that's not making sense, Tim.
Now let's not ignore the fact that he also, guilty or innocent, whatever he may be, came out and totally chattily said, I'm still a member of the Church of Jesus Christ. I believe in Jesus Christ and I believe in the Holy Scriptures. You know, and if I was guilty of something heinous like that, that's exactly where I would go to.
And I was going to say, and that's
gotta stay close to Jesus Christ in your testimony. If you're guilty of sin, or if you're wrongfully accused, the gospel is always the place to go.
So now that's also red meat. Okay, if you're under the presupposition that he's innocent, he's a good guy, member of the church, so on and so forth, then that's good. That's red meat to his camp and people that want to hear that. All right. And there's no better evidence of the fact that these two camps exist and they are both diametrically opposed to each other in an aggressive fashion than all of the comments to the right of this video. Look, first comment, processing Mormonism. And I looked it up. It's somebody whose whole entire existence on this Instagram profile is about being ex-Mormon. That says the LDS Church confirmed this news, so you guys will have to pick your prophet. Tim Ballard, current predator and con man, or Russell M. Nelson, prophet of the LDS Church in a line of prophets that originated with Joseph Smith, also a predator and a con man. You see where it's going. Then literally the next comment, all of you just wait until everything comes to light. The truth will sorry, no, this is another negative one. Sorry, there's another negative one. But then, here's another one that says, I'm LDS and thank our Lord for people like you. He may always bless you and your family and protect you always against all the evil of these latter days. This person is just completely presupposed in the opposite. You know what I'm saying? That he's totally innocent, and this is all just anti-Mormon persecution. See, I stand here in the middle. I'm like, dude, he could be innocent. He could be guilty. What this is about is the church and how it handles these situations and what the protocols are, that we can expect as members, because this does indeed apply to all of us. So let's get to this. I'll let him finish, Brittany, and then let's get to the super chats.
That is often hostile to people of faith. Further, my church has not publicly verified its authenticity. We are also highly suspicious about the timing of such a statement, given its close proximity to Mitt Romney's announcement that he is retiring, and my own public comments that I am prayerfully considering running for public office. The LDS Church does not engage in political activity. In any event, nothing will change my core beliefs. If someone within the church did release this statement, I am absolutely...
P.S. Anybody over at OUR or this American Covenant organization with books that he's writing and tours he's given, if we could give him a dead cat on his microphone, I know you guys are fond of statements of Tim Ballard done on a national scale now for this very big scandal. If we could just get you maybe just a sock to put over the microphone before you record on another windy day, or maybe just put your body in front of the wind and hold the camera like this, you might do us a favor here, because this is almost unusable audio. Keep going.
confident that the right people will step in and ensure that proper due process is followed as the rules of our church dictate. I, my family, and the Spear Fund team will confidently move forward and focus on our mission of saving children from the horrors of sex slavery and remaining fierce defenders of freedom. We invite anyone who shares this passion to please join us. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the entirety of the video. And just really quickly, my thoughts are I don't feel like this did anything for him or against him on a monumental scale, other than he just played double or nothing. He just literally chose double or nothing. Because now if it does come out that there's some kind of smoking gun of morally acceptable behavior, if any of this
morally unacceptable behavior,
or morally unacceptable behavior, if any of this these accusations from women who have spoken with Eric Massoud, how do you pronounce his name, Jacob? You follow all these right wingers. How do you pronounce this guy's name? Moutsos. That was it. If the supposed interview with Eric Moutsos, in which one of the alleged victims gave her story in a way that he claims he believed her, comes
just
out.
FYI, it looks like he has just tweeted a second video or another video saying that he's spoken with a second victim on his Twitter.
Okay. So as I was saying in real time, that doesn't change my analysis of this. This is double or nothing. He just doubled the amount of damage, because
can we all, and sorry to interrupt, but I'm channeling Kwaku L. I can feel him talk to me. Can we all appreciate how much Tim Ballard resembles Samwise Gamgee? Is anybody else feeling this?
Yeah.
Somebody brought this up in the chat,
sure.
and it is spot on, right? He could carry the ring.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's crazy how opposed these two camps are. We support you, and we are covering you in prayer. Remember that no weapon shall prosper, obviously making reference to the famous saying that no unhallowed hand shall stop this work. And then, like, immediately right after it, it's just hate, it's pretty brutal. And I've never really seen something so starkly divided under complete and total tribal lines in a long time. It's pretty intense.
I have.
So, you have?
Yeah. Do we not all remember can I say it on YouTube?
Which thing?
The
Euphemize it. Oh, the jibby jabby?
Jibby jabby.
Yeah.
I mean, we had the camps of follow the prophet, and we had the camp of personal revelation.
Yeah, but none of us were feeling like we were going to be excommunicated, de facto excommunicated in the public square via tabloid if we took a position on that.
I don't know.
We would just get de facto excommunicated by our fellow ward members. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't from the official church. So anyway, okay, cool. Super chats. Hit them, Brittany.
I can't scroll back, so you're going to have to find...
Okay.
We left off on Rebecca.
I left off on Rebecca. Okay, so EJS says... now I got to scroll up.
Yeah, you got to go to... I think hers is in green, if I remember correctly.
I gotta scroll up. Rebecca's was in green. I apologize. This is my error right here. I actually just pressed
we should
all the
stop
way to
for
the
those
bottom.
a little bit more frequently.
Yes. So here we go. We got Glenn Hickman says, I can't put my finger on it and I can't explain it, but my spidey sense is going off. There's just something slightly off about Tim Ballard. I think the church may be onto something. There's a lot of people that feel that way, and I do not blame them. There's this whole situation is odd enough that you almost think, with the commonness of the celebrity starting out doing a good thing, letting it get to his head, and then going too far with women or with money or with pride, that's such a common thing that when there's somebody out there saying it's not happening, and the media is saying it's happening, then you wonder, am I in crazy town? So I can see why somebody says, oh, is there something just off about Tim Ballard? Well, dude, we all remember when the Steele dossier came out, and it was literally unironically floated in primetime for 6 months, that Donald Trump was a Russian asset. I mean, like, that's psychotic. You know, that's worse than a Jason Bourne novel. So anybody that's lived through the media environment of the past 5 years, I can also see why I can see why somebody might think something's off with Tim, but I can see why somebody might think something's off with the church's official statement or off with Vice.
Maybe they're both.
Excuse me, Jacob, hit it.
I was going to say, like, the worst case scenario is that it's both. It's both that Tim Ballard is totally off the rails, and that the church's handling of the situation wasn't good. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, it could just be a full-on ugly situation. On the other hand, what I'm actually hoping for, as bad as this sounds, I'm hoping that we find out that all the proper protocols were followed, that Tim Ballard is lying through his teeth, that he's worthy of every bit of this criticism, and the church makes it out without, it's just like, okay, now it all makes sense. But I feel like there's just so many things right now that are like, man, this is like, it seems like something went haywire on some end of this.
Okay.
Here's the one thing. If it did go haywire, I doubt something like this happens again. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I think if this is the situation where somebody did release an official church statement but didn't necessarily get it as approved as it should have been, I bet they'll take care of that.
But
I don't think they would talk about it. I don't know.
Well, an apostle lost his temper and was like, this is ridiculous.
That's never happened, huh?
Yeah. Well, that's
stairs in Brigham Young.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ready?
That's part of me. Part of me is like, I don't want people freaking out about the church over this. You guys, like, if your testimony of the brethren is so fragile that they make a bad PR move, and that's enough for you to roll out of the church, it's like, goodness gracious, like,
just wait till the AI videos start coming out. Can you imagine?
I don't think we need AI videos.
Just wait until you read church history and actually learn about Brigham Young and about Joseph Smith and the Kirtland Safety Society.
Okay, now my only
called
pushback.
Each other out a lot.
My only
That's
pushback.
why I don't feel like this is too new. Like, it is new to have it from a tabloid outside.
Okay,
but
so my only pushback on that, Jacob, is like, that seems a little bit dismissive of what would be somebody's real suffering at the hands of bureaucratic incompetence if it were true. So again, we're dealing in thought experiments here of if it were true. And so I'm not just willing to sacrifice a high-profile member as some kind of learning curve in the church office building, all right, and brush that off as not needing some kind of robust repentance process institutionally, if it were true, simply because growing pains, So really, if
I don't see it as. I mean,
and hold on, Jacob.
I don't think it's growing pains. I think
it's normal. It's just human beings.
Okay. Well, also, even if it is true, I'm still kind of a little bit confused at the church here, because if it is true, and there are tapes out there that the church knew about of some of these allegations being true, that means there's people that were aware of criminal action and didn't report this guy and didn't instantly excommunicate him.
It wouldn't have been criminal because there was a criminal investigation into all of this, and there were no criminal charges filed. What there are is potentially church improprieties, right? Like an adultery, for instance. Adultery is not a crime. You don't get.
It's not a state crime, is what you're saying.
It's not exactly. It's not a crime in the eyes of the law. However, if some of that was going on, here's where the real question is. If there was infidelity or something like that was going on that merited church discipline, and it's like, well, when did the church find out about this? Tim Ballard is out claiming that no one ever talked to him or his bishop or his stake president, and that he's a member in good standing. He doubles down on that. Then I begin to ask the question, well, wait a minute. The church has said he's done these things that are seriously wrong. How wrong are they? Because they'd have to be pretty wrong to release that statement, but apparently not wrong enough to trigger a church discipline. Like again, I just have all these questions. It's like something seems like it's off here, and I get frustrated with those who just are like, it doesn't matter, just trust the brethren. And I'm kind of like, look, I can trust and sustain the brethren, but also be like, hey, did something get screwed up here so that we all can learn from it?
Well, and it's all because Tim is going for Senate. Like, that's the only thing that makes logical sense. This all happened because he's going to run
how the
for
timing
Senate.
looks.
No, that's why. Hold on. I do want to comment on that. That is why Vice was going after him. That isn't. I do not want to say that is why the church made its statement. But Vice obviously is politically motivated. Duh. The question is, did the church get used by Vice for their own political end?
So I think the real tragedy. There's two organizations, wonderful organizations, that fight abuse and trafficking and hypersexualization and those things. One is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. One is Operation Underground Railroad. They're both great organizations trying to do a very wonderful thing in the world. If this ends up being true, okay, it really hurts OUR and their mission, because they need good women, they need good men to volunteer, to trust the organization, to do the right thing, to try to fight child trafficking. And if they aren't sure about the people running the place and the culture that's going on at OUR, or it all becomes suspect and Vice wins, then organizations like OUR suffer greatly. However, there's also the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which goes the world over saying, don't abuse, love your family. I mean, the proclamation of the family, which Vice News despises, guaranteed they hate, says in the very last paragraph that you need to take care and protect children and families, and abuse is horrible before the Lord, and it's a terrible, terrible sin. The church is trying to do this also wonderfully good thing. And if the church gets tarred by Vice in this way, then it also hurts the church's efforts in fighting the same thing. The point is, there actually is human trafficking. There actually is abuse in the world, and it's horrible and it's evil. And we need good people to fight it. And if Tim's one of those people or not, whatever. The truth will eventually come out. But it doesn't distract from the fact that these are real issues, and real organizations and institutions need to fight them, including the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that goes the world over trying to fight abuse and hypersexualization.
So are you saying we need our own paramilitary group in order to engage in what now is...
That is clearly the point he was making.
I volunteered Jacob to lead us.
So here we go.
Here, we need to get back to those super chats.
Baby.
Okay, Brittany, read...
So many
Avenging
super chats.
Angel.
Okay, guys, I couldn't find
so
more
many.
super chats. Then read me the super chats.
Okay, you got to go back to Rebecca because we've told
I
her-
haven't been able to go back. I went
Okay.
back as far as I could, and unfortunately, Danny Gray's the last one I could see. Can we go back to hearing about Brad's harassing Vice? I'd pay good money to see Brad go off on someone. Yes, it is really funny seeing Brad lose his temper. Sometimes it is. Other times it's not. It depends on if you're on the receiving end or not. John Jensen also says, I'm troubled that Tim and OUR higher-ups have just dismissed Paul Hutchinson's actions on their jump in Mexico as a non-issue. It's hard video evidence of child blank abuse and is indefensible. I have actually this is on my list of investigations here. I have been amazed at how the acts of Paul Hutchinson have been overshadowed by Tim Ballard's celebrity in all this. I mean, if there's a smoking gun, every single person that I've talked to inside of OUR that is familiar with any claims of impropriety during any of their missions, all of them, myriad representatives, have unanimously said Paul Hutchinson is bad news. He purports to be something he's not. He's a charismatic and believable person. But sooner and much sooner than later, people figure out that they don't want to deal with him and kindly ask him to move on. There's myriad organizations that he has been dealt with that he's been either dismissed from, to the best of my understanding, in talking with people who have desired to remain anonymous. And again, I don't like anonymous sources too much, so take this with that grain of salt. But I've spoken to multiple people who have had direct dealings with him, and not nary a peep or one article about Paul Hutchinson. Meanwhile, if there were smoking gun of this, some people claim, there's a decent explanation for X, Y, or Z, but all the OUR people are like, yeah, no.
There was one article on Paul Hutchinson, or at least where he was mentioned.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. He exists in the media, but it's been totally dwarfed by the celebrity of Tim Ballard. And to me, if there's any claim to make about any kind of abuse or impropriety, it's Paul Hutchinson. And I hope that he figures his life out, man, because if those claims are true, and people that I trust are for and against Tim Ballard enough in a way that it oddly kind of cancels each other out. Nobody I've talked to in this investigation that has tangentially referenced Paul Hutchinson has been for him, which would lead me to think that this is not controversy as much as just exposure. So anyway, John Jensen, thank you very much for your super chat. Let's keep going here. Stephen Diamond says, can you believe it has been this long with no mention of the priesthood restoration site? How hard would it be to get you all out here? Can't wait. Hey, if you become a millionaire overnight and can pay for us to get out there and make a documentary of it, we'll do it. Until then, it's in the works as hopefully a stop on a church history tour that hopefully we get done sometime in the next 12 months.
Now that does bear saying. Is a very timely comment, because what's today, everybody? Everybody remember what tonight is?
We already passed.
It's Moroni Day.
It's Moroni Day. Brad knows.
We're going to be
Happy
showing
Moroni
up in
Day,
your room
everybody.
tonight.
That's right.
All right. Okay.
Wait, I just had a random thought.
Make sure to leave some gold plates out.
Yeah,
Oh,
what?
Jeez,
Okay,
Brad.
this is like totally, well, it's on topic, but it's not really what we're talking about. Okay, so Jonah,
And then we got to get to Eric Mutzos,
yeah,
so keep
Jonah
going.
and Jacob, you guys were in bishoprics, or are in bishoprics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've never been to a disciplinary council.
Oh,
Shocking
yeah,
for
right,
some
Brittany.
of them, I know.
Yeah, right.
But when-
Yeah, we know.
when it happens, like, how does it? Okay, so you like condemn the person, okay? But then I feel like there's always like we want you to come back, and there's like an uplifting at the end of it, right?
You
Big
don't.
time.
I don't know that we condemn them.
Yeah,
What
the
we do
condemns
is-
pretty
Okay,
harsh.
condemn would be a hard
They
word,
present
but,
the
like,
evidence. They present
the
the
reality
evidence.
is my experience in them, and I was involved in, even on my mission in some of them, is you bring the person in, and it does obviously depend on like if they're in a state of rebellion, right? Then you have to kind of be a little more forceful. The ones I've been involved in, I think most of them, the person knows what's happened, and it's like hey, like, we're here to help you. Like, you've done some things that you shouldn't have done, and like, we want to understand your feelings on it. They express those feelings. You talk about repentance. You talk about, we're not here, like, and at least in the ones that I've been in on, it's sort of like, we're not here to condemn you. It's actually quite the opposite. It's sort of like, we are here to find the path forward so that you can have this taken from you, right? So that you can put this behind you, so that you can have a clear conscience and kind of a clear thing. And when you do that with people, when you go to someone who hopefully has, feels remorse for what they've done, it's a beautiful thing, because they feel like, I feel awful for this. I want to make this right. And now you come in and you say, like, here's how we're going to do that. And we love you. And we never want you to, like, ever think that we don't love you. And the Lord loves you. And he just wants you to be with him. And like, you're like, now the healing can begin, sort of thing. Right. You know what I mean? Like,
this deserves probably its own episode in the future here.
Yeah, I was going to say,
but
about membership councils.
Just in short, membership councils are some of the most spiritual experiences I've ever had in my entire life.
Agreed.
Some of the most deeply just amazing. I mean, you walk out of that room.
Hey, we should have one, Bert.
Spirit stick.
What do you want to do?
Just
So
for fixing
I've
the
got
mess.
to
Yeah.
I've
Okay,
got
but
to
you
throw
guys see
down.
where
Rex Good reposted his super chat just in the chat.
Okay, wait, hold on. But just on this topic really fast. Do you see where I'm going with this? Like the church's statement, there was nothing of that, of we love you, Tim, and come back. It was all condemnation. That's why I think it's so weird.
Well, and I think that part of the reason for that is because if indeed he has been using the church's doing bad things and he is not repentant of it, if he doesn't have, if a person's in a state of rebellion, then yes, then you have to go in and condemn what's happened.
Okay, cool. So again, I would just like to reiterate that all of these things, all they do is up the ante. Everybody has been sitting this whole week saying, wow, there's 3 ways that this could go. In this one, if we learn that X, Y, or Z claims are true, then, it's really bad for him. But if you learn if X, Y, or Z claims are false, then it's really good for him. Well, which is it? Because everybody keeps playing double or nothing, and the silence is deafening. The specifics are minimal, and all we can really rely upon are vagaries. So it just ups the ante every time. So now we've talked about some things that seem to fall in Tim Ballard's favor. Let's talk about some things that seem to not fall in favor.
I'm gonna read
super chat.
Rex Good super chat.
Yes.
He said, if it's true, then it isn't that it's high profile. It's that it's predatory, and if it's predatory, people should be warned.
Okay, fair enough.
Point.
Fair enough.
Fair point.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Rex. That
it's a good point.
Yeah,
good gotcha, point. Rex. Good. Okay, so now we're going to move on to what happened today. We got 2 media dumps. One from Tim Ballard, playing double or nothing, but man. One from the other camp playing double or nothing here. Here's Eric Moutsos claiming to have spoken to 2 of the alleged victims here. And Eric Moutsos, he is exactly what he looks like. A ripped up dude who is he's popular in right-wing circles in Utah. He's somewhat of a regional thought leader, I think we could correctly surmise. And I've seen him, I believe, reposted by Charlie Kirk, and also sells supplements. So is that a fair analysis of his summary of his online persona?
And he would be someone that you would expect to be on Tim Ballard's side.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So,
who has been on Tim Ballard's side before, right?
And that's why I'm saying that this evidence here that we're showing, I shouldn't say evidence, but this data point here that we're going to add to the equation doesn't look good for Tim. So let's see what Eric Moutsos has to say.
Many of you have been asking me why I went from defending Tim Ballard for the last several months and even years to now admonishing him to return to his spiritual compass. Number 1, Tim Ballard has been accused of some very disturbing, immoral, and potentially illegal behavior. Number 2, at this time, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has taken an unprecedented step to distance themselves from Tim Ballard. Number 3, the board of OUR removed him after many accusations. Number 4, I have personally spoken to not only 1, but now 2 of Tim Ballard's victims. Their stories are heartbreaking, wrenching, and tragic. But from my life experience, especially as a former law enforcement officer, where I have interviewed hundreds and hundreds of victims, I believe them.
Okay, now I'm just going to pause right there. That's a powerful statement. And now, again, what did we say on our second live stream, the Emergence stream? Our first live stream was talking about the accusations, the weirdness of the article, and what can we expect here? What's going on? Engaging in some basic thought experiments about the possibilities. The second was when details came out as to who wrote it and other articles, we did the Emergence stream. And one of the things that Brittany the Shadow pointed out was that when Tim Ballard responded to the allegations, he made a very forceful claim that Brittany said specifically that I believe him. He is impassioned. He is serious. I hope you're enjoying that soda and your snack, Jacob. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, that's a powerful statement he's making, that I am innocent, investigate me. Well, dude, here's an equally powerful statement. I'm going to go back just another 5 seconds And here's Eric Moutsos.
Where I have interviewed hundreds and hundreds of victims, I believe them. And I also believe that all of this will come out in the near future. While Tim Ballard has done tremendous good combating child sex trafficking, it does not make him immune from the human condition which we all have. But also, to be clear, we should all be willing to pursue the truth, even if these truths are very uncomfortable and inconvenient. Unfortunately, this is not a case of the left just trying to cancel out an honest man. And though I wasn't there, these accusations are serious, and I trust my sources. During this time of...
Okay,
I don't get the same emotional connection to him.
Well, this is why
I
women
feel
shouldn't
like
vote.
He's just
But no, I'm just kidding.
He's just reading off a teleprompter. I believe them, and also, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Hey, okay, but here is let me throw the real monkey wrench into this whole thing.
Another.
If what those women said is true, then what Tim was engaged in is something that would have merited church discipline. And so I sit there and go, okay, let's just say my next question, if what Eric just said is true and those accounts are true, that means what Eric was engaged, or not Eric, what Tim was engaged in is something that would have merited church discipline. And my question is, why didn't church discipline get engaged?
Yeah,
good question.
That's I can see why a lot of rational people would ask that. Now I'm going to show. I accidentally played them out of order, but here's his first one that dropped today a little bit earlier.
From Greek tragic heroes from the story of Macbeth.
Oops, let me go to
We learn from Greek tragic heroes from the story of Macbeth, and from the collective wisdom of our forefathers that good men with good intentions can and do make mistakes. Even King David, who was beloved of the Lord, needed to be rebuked and to repent. For over an hour today, I spoke to one of the female victims coming forward about Tim Ballard, who was with the Operation Underground Railroad. And I have concluded that Tim Ballard needs to return to his roots and his principles, recalibrate his spiritual compass, reconcile with those around him, including his friends and supporters like myself, and hopefully re-emerge as a renewed and more refined man and leader. The real measure of a man is not if he sins and makes mistakes, which we all do, some of us every day, but what he does to correct and rectify them.
Okay, so that was his original statement, which was also very powerful. And the reason why I want to say, again, both sides here, for and against Tim Ballard, want some smoking guns, right? But at the end of the day, we haven't gotten any smoking guns that tip the scale. All we've gotten are data points that just double or nothing. They add to the ante, because at the end of the day, all we have here is a very healthy and robustly supplemented, probably off of his own supplements, guy who had a conversation with an alleged victim who's not willing to go on the record anywhere yet, nor with Vice, nor with him, nor with us, with Greg Matsen at Cwic Media, or with Zelf on the Shelf, okay? It's still just vagaries that are existing under the auspices of a tabloid and social media, and there's nothing that we can grab at other than, do we trust this guy and his law enforcement experience that he believes the victim?
From Glenn Hickman, church discipline hasn't been initiated yet because he's obviously denying it. So what's the point if he's denying it? The church will wait until there are formal allegations and more evidence before church discipline is initiated.
That's a possibility. That's a possibility.
And that's a super chat from Glenn Hickman.
Okay. So either way, it's like, I want to believe Eric Moutsos, because, I don't want to think that somebody's getting bamboozled. And I want, if there's victims of these issues, to have somewhere that they can go and be believed and have not just a crying shoulder, but an avenue for getting the truth out there. No institution is worth protecting that level of abuse, right? No matter how holy it is. And if there's somebody doing that, get them the heck out of here.
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Rebecca just posted her comment again, and I don't want to lose it before the chat scrolls.
Okay.
So Rebecca says, for anyone interested, Tim's wife is being interviewed live tomorrow on FM 105.9 at 5 p.m. It also can be replayed live on the Rod Arquette Show podcast after 7 p.m. tomorrow.
Yes.
That was her super chat.
Yes.
Did we already say that?
No, but
Okay.
I'm not permitted to say what the statement is from people that I've talked to, but I've heard an official statement coming from Tim's wife. I've heard a rough draft of that. So I know that that is forthcoming as well. Again, it's a statement. It will be another data point to add to this equation, but there's no smoking gun in it, at least any versions that I have been privy to. So anyway. Brad.
Go ahead, Brad. Go ahead, Brad.
I was just going to say, back on the Glenn Hickman super chat about the church discipline not being initiated yet. I do think that with that situation of the church discipline, is that something you guys feel like you would have expected to happen before? Jacob, you were mentioning that. Like, do you think that it would need to have come out before or after the criminal proceedings, if there were any, right? Or is it, I guess, because the investigation didn't bring up anything
It also
criminal?
depends. I think, if I'm not mistaken, and I might be mistaken here, so I'm just giving my best estimate of this, is that if anything becomes criminal, the church does not get involved in its proceedings until after the criminal stuff is actually concluded. So if there is the possibility of criminal charges being involved in all of this, or some kind of legal proceedings, then there could also be reason why it is delayed, because the church doesn't get involved in things that are currently being hashed out in the courts until that has resolved. At least that is my understanding. It could be wrong, so don't take that take that with a grain of salt. But if there was a criminal investigation or a civil investigation or something like that that was forthcoming or happening, I could see how the church could pump the brakes. However, I still would think that they would at least be aware, like the bishop or the stake president in some way. Then again, Tim could be totally lying about all of this.
Okay, we only got 12 more minutes. We only got 12 more minutes.
I've had so many grains of salt this conversation. We had a couple other things that we thought we might talk about. Carden, do you want to get to those? Or do you want to
Yes,
save
I was going to say. Overall, I got to say I do like this guy's. Profile. I now identify as a pattern recognitionist. And then another post here I thought was pretty funny where he said, the problem is not that there is a lack of money, food, or water, or land. The problem is we've given control of these resources to psychopaths. You know what? I like everything that I'm reading so far. Is
that Eric Mutzos?
Yeah, that's Eric Mutzos.
He just needs to work on his delivery on camera.
Yeah, he needs to work on
Was he talking about super chats to us?
No. So are there any super chats that we can get to? Okay, guys, if you haven't yet liked the stream, please make sure you like the stream. If you haven't yet subscribed, please consider a subscription. If you want us to read your questions over the air, we've got 12 minutes left before we got to go. And please just ask us our super chats there.
We should have anybody who did put in a super chat that we missed, just put like 2 asterisks before what your comment was and repost it so that we can get back to those.
Yeah.
Because there were a few.
There's been some collateral damage. I do feel bad for Tim Ballard's family. And I also do feel bad for the media latching on to what they have called this medium or this psychic. I was able to do a lot of digging and cover a lot of information about this woman. She seems actually like a very nice woman. There's a lot of, I don't want to call it misinformation because that's an abused term nowadays. But this woman, Janet Russin, actually seems to come very highly recommended in all aspects of life. I've spoken to myriad individuals that have had interactions with her, both on a personal level as well as on not necessarily, I don't want to say professional, because she does nothing to market herself that I've been able to detect as what we would usually call a psychic or a medium. She's not reading tarot cards in that poorly painted building in the the center of town on Main Street. She's not walking around shaking bones or with unkempt hair,
which would be really cool.
Yeah,
which would be super cool.
Yeah.
Which would be cool. There's no Ouija boards within arm's length. There's a couple
that would get on Bill Reel's podcast.
That would get on Bill Reel's podcast. Yeah, this poor woman seems to have been dragged through the mud by every ex-Mormon, anti-Mormon podcaster and every atheistic anti-Mormon out there that would love to just make fun of anything godly. And one of the biggest reservations I've had of people giving me information to I don't want to say exonerate, but to expose more the true nature of this woman, is that they've said that the experiences with her have been so just holy and beautiful and sacred that they'd feel that it would be like casting pearls before swine. So I'm under a gag order from multiple people of speaking about some specifics of her gift of sight. But I can say this, and I have run this by the people that I have talked to about her, is that she's a lovely person, and she did not seek this out. She actually came recommended after having helped advance, I don't want to say solve, because she's not a gumshoe sleuth with a cigar, but having assisted very positively in the successful investigations of several organizations, some of them with 3 or 4 letters in Southern California. She was actually recommended to OUR and to Tim Ballard, who were at first skeptical. But anybody familiar with U.S. history and the military-industrial complex knows that the CIA and the Army, they're no stranger to psychics, mediums, and remote viewers. You know what I'm saying? They're no strangers to belief in other than the palpable and the naturalistic in front of you. So,
we all seen the show. We've all seen the show Psych, and it's based on that premise. But apparently, I didn't realize that that's actually a thing. That in law enforcement, like, it isn't.
Yeah,
I will tell you,
and like we said the other day, I mean, if it's working, then who cares? If it turns out that it's not doing anything to help, then it's kind of like,
and by the way,
really the best thing to be doing.
I know the atheistic, anti-Mormons are going to hate this, but I have been in firesides where testimony of both believing members of our church and their non-religious counterparts have reached a point in the investigation searching after a kidnapped child where literally the member proposed, "We have run out of options and we're running out of time. I suggest we pray." And as I don't know what you call them in LAPD, but as not a platoon or a battalion, but as a unit, shall we say, they have been asked to kneel in prayer, have done it, and then have gotten into their patrol cars as Nephi in Jerusalem going, however the phrase goes, I knew not where I go, save the Spirit directs me, right? And then have been led through what I could not call anything else, according to these LAPD people's stories, led through divine intervention to the place that this vulnerable citizen needed them in order to be saved and close the case. And they could do nothing other than credit God, in the prayer that they've done. And when you read the interesting cases of everything from remote viewing to what some people might jokingly call telepathy or Star Wars stuff that our government has engaged in, there's more there than I feel comfortable just denouncing as in some atheistic write-off. And if we're talking about saving kids here, I do not slight anybody for wanting to use somebody's alleged or non-alleged gift of sight. And in my speaking with everybody that has dealt with this woman, it seems like she did not seek it out. It was not for any kind of prideful ends. And this idea that she's channeling Nephi from the Book of Mormon is really not based off of any kind of reality out there. Again, nobody wanted to say any other details out of such a wild degree of respect for this woman that I was actually moved by the amount of people that were just like, no, this what you're hearing is false. More so, I'll tell you, people were more defensive of this woman than they were of Tim Ballard. So I thought those were some really interesting data points to add to this whole thing. She'd helped supposedly finding, from what I heard, some details in 3 different cases, or maybe my handwriting here is bad, 3 missing bodies in Southern California. And that also some of the attorneys used in one of the original cases where she was interviewed inquired about her services. And I do believe one of my sources here even mentioned that Schmidt, the piano player, asked for her help in finding his daughter that I do believe was found at the base of a mountain or something like that. John Schmidt, the piano player. Yeah,
really?
and that apparently, her being used in this kind of endeavor is not as crazy a thing. And this idea that she's channeling Nephi from the book of Nephi, of large in stature, that is an abuse of the reality that some people think is meant to make her look foolish in a way that she's not, and others think could just possibly be some kind of mistake. So anyway, that's some of what I've been able to come up with. And this is an incredible.
We've had some extra super chats
hit 'em.
set up.
And then we got to go.
So,
We've got 3 minutes. Hit him.
So Rex Good says, you all may not get to this, but a few months ago I mailed, he walked the Americas. Has anyone taken a look at it? If you're not going to get to it, I'd like it back.
Oh, that's
yes,
fine.
Actually, I have it. I have it right here on my Ward librarian shelf. I have a whole review planned. We're going to talk about it, Rex Good. You're a good man. You're a good man with a good referral of a good book.
It's going to be a fun conversation. I definitely want to get into more of the Book of Mormon geography stuff with you guys. I think we could do some really fun episodes around that.
Yeah. Okay.
Good
Other
episodes.
super chats. Hit it, Brad.
Okay. Next up, another person on this subject said, the big problem I see is too many members are engaging in hero worship. Ultimately, a decent amount of members are founded in their ideologies rather than the savior. My personal opinion, Daniel Swerenson. And I think, I've seen evidence of that. I've seen also people way more concerned with just disliking Tim Ballard and letting that be their whole take on this issue. So I think that it's been really fascinating. Like, there is absolutely a hero worship element going on, and I think that needs to be called out, and anyone who's doing it should stop. At the same time, if you're just going to villainize the guy because you dislike his politics, also not super helpful to the conversation. I think the key thing that we want to find is what's true.
It should be said, the real heroes, and I mean, there's lots of heroes to go around. I think the real heroes that don't get enough credit are the local law enforcement officers in Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and Colombia who go help on these missions, and they don't get to fly home to Salt Lake City. They have to stay there in Bogota and risk their lives every day to go help these kids. So I know that it's wonderful that OUR is facilitating this. Tim Ballard, true or not true, these allegations, he has done a marvelous thing by creating OUR. But I think that there's local law enforcement officers on the ground in Central and South America who are putting their lives on the line, doing marvelous things, and they don't get enough credit, and they never will. They're nameless guys just doing their job, and God bless them.
Okay, also, we need somebody to rewrite a super chat here. I had it clicked on here, and I was going to read it, but then I unclicked it, and too many chats have gone by. So please, somebody had asked, they said, I heard that X candidate is the one that...
Oh, I remember that one. I will do my best to just pull it out of my memory. I think they were saying that they had heard Brad Wilson was behind it, that Brad Wilson, one of the other guys running for Senate, had something to do with this statement coming out. And they were asking specifically if we had heard anything about that. So
my short answer is yes.
And my short answer is no. What I had heard was that there was somebody suspicious that it was someone else who wanted to support Brad Wilson, but not that it was Brad Wilson trying to get that happening.
Yes, back before we understood if this statement was indeed authenticated or not, we were getting calls from a lot of politicians, political campaigns, people adjacent to political campaigns or politicians, or those who are seeking public office, trying to say, like, I'm not associated with this. We got a very interesting first wave of people trying to say, look, we're not associated with this. And one of the things that I heard from multiple of those sources, was a frustration that they had felt that the church had already had their approved candidate, that was this Wilson character, that apparently that was the one that behind the scenes, I don't like saying the brethren because I know for a fact that they do not think in a uniform fashion politically, but I think there's a little bit more of a uniform thought process amongst the bureaucrats of the church office building that I've been able to sense, especially within the PR department. and that was also one of the preferred candidates of the moderate folks that seem to occupy the bureaucracy who are under the influence of Mitt Romney. And we, in our thought experiment on our first live stream where we talked about, hey, how politically motivated could this be and how far up does it go? We had discovered in our conversations with many of these sources that Mitt Romney is still indeed influential in the church office building to such a degree that many, I shouldn't say many, but more than one that I have talked to have heard mention of the colloquial term, the 13th apostle used, which me coming from a political standpoint, I would view that as a governmental abuse of the church instead of a church's abuse of government connection. I'd view that as the other. However, it seems that there was not that direct of a connection to Mitt Romney, so we were able to rule that out early. However, that doesn't rule out the conversations I've had with so many people saying like, wow, like the moderates that really like any candidate that seems to represent that 1960 to 1989 suburban niceness, what some would consider mistaking suburban niceness for kindness, really seem to be the de rigueur of the bureaucracy. And I have heard that name floated around as a preferential candidate for those that claim to be in the know of what the church office building thinks. Now, on its face, I think that's a little bit difficult of a claim to make because there's thousands of employees. And I'm sure that the cross-section of those employees are just as divided if you were actually to sit them down and ask them deep political questions. But if there is any groupthink that can be commented on, that seemed to be a common thread of the groupthink from the people I was able to talk to. So anyway, Yo Cardin says Ziploc95, give me a call sometime about my mission in Poland. You got my number a while back and I'd love to have a conversation. I do believe I remember you reaching out on the website. Thank you very much. And we'll have to. I've got Polish heritage. I love the church in Poland. I love Polish people. I love the weird names. Everything about Poland's great, man. So anyway, any last questions before you? It looks like we lost Jacob here.
We had one from Stephen Diamond, if we want to get into it.
Yeah, hit it. Unless you feel we have to censor it, but what?
It was, Brad, tell us more about your book. I'm hoping to get it, but I'd like to know what it's about and what inspired it. I'm trying to become a novelist.
Hit it. That's going to be our outro, bro.
Sure. So here, let me grab one real quick.
While he's grabbing one, all three of my boys read Brad's book, and they all dug it.
Oh, most importantly, did they like it and did they review it on Amazon, Jonah Barnes? That's what really matters.
Actually, I think one of them reviewed. We only have one Amazon account, so yes, it's been reviewed. But they all really loved it, and my dudes they're the age, they're totally honest. And I was like,
are you one of those families? Are you one of those families when you got married, you got rid of your individual Facebook profiles and you did a group profile?
No, that's so
no, they have
lame.
a group Amazon account.
And you do a whole group Amazon account? Oh, man, that's funny. You're like those people that always make sure when you call his cell phone that you know that he's married and that his wife's name is Janet. And that's funny. Okay, what is it? Tell us all about it.
But they loved it, Brad. All my guys loved it. It's fun. They actually were really honestly impressed with it. It's pretty cool. So
awesome. Thanks, dude. So it's this one here is called Dragon Thief, and it's under the pen name Blake and Raven Pen. Riley and I were too Googleable, so we just used a pen name to make it easier on us and make it so we didn't have to compete with our IMDb and stuff like that. So Dragon Thief. It's the Skystone Chronicles Book 1. If anyone wants to, you can go and search the skystoneChronicles.com, and we've got a website up for it. It's got a lot of really fun stuff. My wife has illustrated a ton of things for it. We've got our second book coming out in like a week, I think 2 weeks. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. What it's about a young guy who's like a half dragon. He's a half-born, and he has an opportunity to steal a true dragon egg, and that'll get him close to the head of the mage hunters who killed his mom. So he's on a quest for revenge, and it's a really fun book. My wife and I really wanted to write it because we've been writers for years, and we were writing like screenplays and things like that. We studied at BYU. We studied the theater media arts degree, and we focused in on writing. And then when 2020 rolled around, we had some ideas that we were like, hey, we want to write these out, but we also don't have the budget. And so we were like, hey, if we made it a book, we don't have to worry about budget. So we've always loved dragons and fantasy stuff. So we wrote our book. And
Guys,
Dragon Thief is book 1. Dragon Guard is book 2.
It's wholesome. It's wholesome. It's my kids, they want to read comic books. This is not comic books. It's good reading. It's thick. I mean, it goes all the way to the margin. If you print it on regular pages, it'd be like a 500-page book. It's good for your kids. You know what they're reading. They're reading it from 2 faithful members who aren't putting any crud in it. So you can get this for your nephew. You can get this for your grandchild. Okay. And my kids were like 10 to 14 age, and they ate it up. All right. So you know somebody who needs this book. It's good. It'll take up space from all the horrible media out there that the world's trying to choke them with. So
yeah.
Thanks, Jonah.
Oh, Jonah, you're so awesome, man. So anyway, thank you so much for hanging out with us, guys. This has been totally awesome. What's the one last super chat? Hit it, Bird. What is it?
Hold on.
It must have come up literally in the neck.
Braden Barty says, has anyone ever mentioned that on Rotten Tomatoes, The Sound of Music has 99 with the audience, but only 60 with the critics?
The Sound of Freedom or The Sound of Music?
Says The Sound of Music. Maybe he
probably
meant freedom.
Yeah, he probably meant The Sound of Freedom. But yeah, Rotten Tomatoes has had some real, they don't have a good track record with things that are political. Like Dave Chappelle's last stand-up routine literally had like a 99.9% audience fresh rating and like 1% with the critics. Okay. I'm not surprised that Sound of Freedom is batting a similar batting average.
And he did correct that in the comments. He meant Sound of Freedom.
He meant The Sound of Freedom. Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for hanging out with us, guys. Again, Oh, you got 2 more. Okay,
yeah.
Well, let me say my little outro statement, and then we'll read those.
Okay.
Again, we reiterate for all of the anti-Mormon, ex-Mormon haters out there, for all the atheistic anti-Mormon haters out there, for the people that just don't like my mug or don't like Brad or Kwaku or now Jonah, this is less about Tim Ballard. It's actually not even really about Tim Ballard. It's more about the protocols of how the situation is handled and escaping our tribalism to look at evidence here. And the biggest frustration we have had is vagaries versus specifics and trying to figure out the evidence of this so we can judge righteously the situation, okay? We're not stands for Tim Ballard. This is not a Tim Ballard apologetic show. I've been snubbed 3 times. We've done media inquiries to get him on this show. Jacob himself has said, I've been skeptical of OUR from the beginning. He's very skeptical of most organizations. And none of us came here thinking, oh, we got to defend Tim Ballard. What we are is confused by what seems to be an inconsistent model of behavior, and we're trying to seek a pattern here so we can also understand and not predict the future, but kind of at least have a fair understanding of what one could expect in dealing with the church in some of these high profile cases. Because I got to tell you, I think this is one of the canaries in the coal mine. I don't know whether it's AI. I don't know whether it's our political division. I don't know if it's an invasion from aliens or from the CCP in China once they finally go to war with Taiwan. I think that we have enjoyed the past 50 to 60 years, okay, a very autopilot time where the media could be generally trusted. Your neighbor on average could be generally trusted and not, trusted to hate you just because of your affiliation for or against a church. But now we're in perilous times where some of those social norms that we used to lean upon for strength and understanding and predictability in our lives, those social norms are not here anymore. We're at each other's throats. And when a high-profile person either needs to be censured or is being somebody's bearing false witness against him, we want to see how the church is going to act. And there's a lot of confusion based off what we've seen so far that I think average, good, normal people might ask questions about. And so we're trying to ask those questions and get answers as well by exploring the evidence for and against this specific Tim Ballard situation. So for anybody that's saying this is a stand for him, no. We wouldn't be playing Eric Moutsos if we thought it was, and we wouldn't be joking about how he hasn't been around for his own habeas corpus in the court of public opinion, saying some of the misstatements of his Instagram post. But we will also give credit where credit is due and say, hey, look, when these facts come out, those also work on his behalf. So anyway, we're undecided here. We're undecided okay? But we want to give you all the evidence as best we can.
Did we get our last 2 super chats?
Yep, hit them up, and that's our outro.
Andreas Zirtus says, Moroni visited 200 years ago today. Remember that.
Boom,
And
shakalaka.
Happy Moroni Day, everybody.
It's a
Happy
huge
Moroni
thing.
Day.
The gospel has been restored because of that, you know? There's some really cool stuff about the, was it the Feast of Trumpets that it was on, technically?
Tabernacles.
Or Tabernacles.
Well, trumpets, I think. Wait, doesn't
in
trumpets
the year
feature
that he
in it?
came to Joseph Smith. I think it was trumpets in the year that he came to Joseph Smith. Trumpets is coming up in just a few days. I think the 29th.
Are you
And
predicting
Moroni
the
is always
second coming?
pictured with
Was that
with a trumpet, right?
Was that a Ward
There's some
Radio
interesting
exclusive that you're predicting the second coming on
What,
Wednesday?
me?
Yeah, is this a Ward Radio exclusive that you're predicting the second coming at the Trump of Moroni?
Clip it.
You know
Clip
what
No,
I'm saying?
that's
said it.
not what I'm saying.
Clip it.
I'm saying it could be read as a sign of the times.
By the way,
Sean Bailey just left a super
Okay.
chat, and he would be the right one to tell us. So Sean Bailey does a great podcast about the second coming. He has a good book called Chronological Signs of the Second Coming. Is that what it was? I'm blanking
yes.
on the name of the title. It's really good.
Yeah.
The episode came out today, guys. Go back and watch it.
Yeah, I was about to say we just dropped
but-
that one today.
But he just super chatted saying maybe the morally unacceptable behavior is that he had to kill some traffickers.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, that's not off the table. It's not clear enough. For
All
us
of
to
the
know.
pro Tim Ballard people are like, yeah! You know what I'm saying? They're just like, all right, I will say one self-deprecating thing before we go.
Oh,
This is
great.
embarrassing. My family, they're good, faithful members, but my mom's a convert. My dad was mostly inactive his youth. They became much better in their activity level as our family matured and got older. But I did go to BYU, and I remember my first conference weekend. It was a Saturday, and it got really busy in the hallway. And a buddy came in, and I was kind of still waking up a little bit. I'd slept in. He's like, dude, are you coming? I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, dude, we're going to church. I was like, bro, it's a Saturday. He's like, it's conference weekend. I'm like, yeah, that's tomorrow. And he's like, no, it's conference weekend. I'm like, yeah, that's tomorrow. And he's like, we're going to the Saturday session. I was like, there's a Saturday session? I had no idea until I was in college that there was a Saturday session. So when you say it's Moroni Day, I don't know. Is there really, or was that just a colloquial reference you came up with on the spot, or is there really a church phenomenon called Moroni Day?
I don't.
And I don't know about.
No,
I
everybody
think-
listening is probably dressed in togas right now with trumpets. What are you talking about? It's
You
Moroni
mean you
Day.
don't celebrate this every year?
I have a toga on underneath this.
Yeah. Okay.
Moroni
you leave
Day,
out
don't
a
you know?
gold plate with milk and cookies for Moroni.
Yeah.
But you need to have 3 separate gold plates
Oh,
in case
no,
he comes
it's
3
horrible.
times, right? I am so sorry.
That was pure gold. All right.
That was
And we loved
horrible.
it. Brittany, hit it. What do you
Okay,
got?
We have one more super chat.
One last super
and then
chat.
I'm
Here we go.
literally leaving.
Yes. Then we're all leaving. All right. What is
Okay.
it, Brittany?
Brandon Cole says, thanks for the show. It helps to hear perspectives that I hadn't thought about. I think that the important thing for us to do for now is extend grace to and withhold judgment for all involved until the facts come out.
Yes, I think that's a very mature and good way of putting things. A lot of people feel the silence from the church. That a church statement clarifying some things would be very helpful with the situation. But other than that, waiting patiently and faithfully is about all that I guess we really can do for now, with eyes wide open to both possibilities, because hero worship on one side would be incorrect. And on the other side, condemning somebody without what we would kind of consider spiritual due process also seems a little bit incorrect. So yes, we watch, we wait, we listen, hopefully. And other than that, if you want to check out more, please, everybody like this before you go. Okay, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. If you could help us out, if you haven't been able to super chat, please check us out on Venmo. You can either search for Midnight Mormons or at Ward Radio. If you go on Venmo and you at Ward Radio, search at Ward Radio, you could always give us a contribution through Venmo. Either way, this has been awesome. Thanks, guys, for hanging out with us. Throw up your book one more time before we go, Brad. You can check it out. It is The Dragon Thief. Buy the book. Review the book. Tell your friends about the book. Other than that,
The Skystone Chronicles, Book 1.
That sounds super geeky, but everybody says it's awesome.
So is.
You know what I'm saying? So anyway,
it's a geeky book, dude.
But it's
a
good.
dragon book.
Yes,
but it's good.
But it's good.
It's
so,
a fun one.
Again,
like if you like Aragon or Mistborn, you'd really like our book.
All right, great. This has been real, and it's been fun, and it's been real fun.